Hello everybody, I'm Rowan6 with Rowan6 Entertainment, and welcome to a new series, a audiobook series of my fanfiction, The Dragon Hero Dovahkiin. The background art for this fanfiction is created by me. If you're interested in me doing art commissions for you, the link to my business Discord is down below. There's also a link to my community Discord, as well as the fanfiction link. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
Melissa was heading to the training grounds with excitement that could easily be seen with every step she made. She could not wait for today's lesson because today she was learning her first spell. She did not know what spell she would be learning, but the fact that she was finally learning a spell excited her to no end. Even though she'd been studying magic for 2 months now, which was quite evident by her room being flooded with tomes about magical history and theory, she could not help but wonder what magic was truly capable of. She noticed Izuku was careful not to give her any books that would allow her to attempt to cast a spell without him, but just enough knowledge for her to understand the mechanics of how magic worked. Although a part of her was annoyed at him for that, but the bigger and more logical part of her knew that he was only doing that for her safety. Especially when she could feel how dangerous it was when it was constantly flowing through her. The constant flow of magic's chaotic nature served as a constant reminder to Melissa that magic wasn't a toy to be played with. So, she stuck to the studying and control exercises that she was taught. Now her patience and her training were starting to pay off. So, as she entered the training field for her first lesson on casting her first spell, she wasn't expecting to step into a war zone. Apparently, Lydia, for some reason, was fighting the number 7 ranked pro hero Mirako and winning. Craters littered the ground from Mirako's kicks, giving the training ground the appearance that an artillery barrage had hit it. Lydia was wearing a full set of Nordic steel plate armor, and the only signs of damage on her were a couple of scuff marks on the armor and a dent or two on the steel shield she was wielding. Mirako, on the other hand, looks like she came out of a war zone. She was covered in cuts and bruises, and one of her arms was obviously broken, evidenced by how the arm was pretty much purple and lay limp at her side. But what truly drew her attention was the feral grin plastered on Mirako's face and the clear excitement in her eyes. The two were about to go at it again before a loud voice rang out through the training area. "Okay, that's enough, you two. This is starting to get out of hand. Also looks like Melissa finally got here, so we will be starting training once Nemuri and Kuros get here. So get over here and heal up," Izuku said as his voice rang through the air, catching both Lydia's and Rumi's attention. Lydia simply sheathed her sword and started her walk toward Izuku without a second thought. Rumi followed her a few seconds afterward and grumbled all the way. As Melissa turned towards Izuku's position, she noticed he wasn't alone. Beside him was Serena as well as another pro hero Ryukyu. She was quite shocked at seeing 2 of the top 10 pro heroes here, let alone the fact that Lydia, who was completely quirkless, was able to nearly defeat one of them without a scratch. As Melissa got to the position, so did Rumi and Lydia. "Fuck girl, you're good, I can't believe I didn't even injure you in any way. Are you sure you are quirkless? Because right now, I'm starting to think otherwise," Rumi asked as she sat down on one of the benches that Izuku conjured for her to sit on. Rumi was honestly impressed by her skill. She knew if this was a real fight and that girl wasn't fighting with a blunted weapon, she would be dead right now or at least missing some limbs. The fact that she could dodge her attacks in full plate armor with such ease amazed her. Not to mention that she blocked not just 1 but 2 of her attacks with that shield of hers. She didn't know what that shield was even made out of. All she knew was that she was barely able to dent it. Normally, something like that would just cave in and become nothing but a hunk of metal with only one of her kicks. She's honestly starting to think that she has some type of strength quirk or durability quirk. I'm indeed what you people call quirkless. Everything I use is nothing but a skill that I have honed through countless battles. Those fights that you have with those petty criminals are child's play compared to what our group went through on a daily basis. But do not underestimate your capabilities, Mirako. The fact that you could dent my shield in the first place was a feat in itself. Not to mention that you were able to break my shield arm as well. Lydia says as she removes her Nordic gauntlet, which reveals that, indeed, her arm was broken. But before anyone could comment on it, Lydia grabbed her arm and pulled, and in one fluid motion, she set the bone in her arm. The only sign of discomfort that came from this action was a minor grunt of pain. Everybody besides the two other dragon slayers looked at her in shock. "Fuck, that was hardcore, you got to teach me how to do that," Rumi said, impressed. "Yeah, I don't think you should encourage that kind of behavior, Rumi. Plus, I think we should be more concerned that she has the experience to set her arm by herself in the first place, not to mention the pain tolerance that she has is insane," Ryako said, concerned. Guys, I don't know if I told you, but this is kind of commonplace for warriors in Skyrim. Nordic children are taught the art of the sword once they're old enough to pick up a sword, and one of the first things they train in is their pain tolerance as well as self-treatment. Especially when they need to learn how to set their bones in the middle of a battle so that when they drink a minor healing potion, their bones don't heal incorrectly. Izuku said, sheepish. "Are you telling me that is the standard for warriors in Skyrim? You got to be fucking kidding me. What do they feed you over there if what Lydia is standard?" Rumi asked, shocked. "No, my skill as a warrior outstrips most in Skyrim, although my ancestors did conquer the continent of Skyrim with only 500 men and nearly wiped out an entire race in the process. But for what we eat, nothing special, just a lot of meat and sweet rolls," Lydia said. This shocked the group. How could 500 men conquer an entire continent and wipe out an entire race? What the hell did they put in their food to do that? But their shock didn't last long though, because Lydia quickly realized something as her eyes widened. "No, I just realized I'm never going to be able to eat Hulda's sweet rolls ever again," Lydia says as she starts crying a river of tears. This made everybody laugh, especially when Izuku and Serenus started crying for the same reason. It took a second for everybody to calm down, but when they did, Melissa spoke up. "Giggle, I feel for your loss, but I have to ask, why were you two fighting in the first place? It was way too intense for any normal spar," Melissa asked curiously after she got her giggles under control. As Lydia wipes away her tears, she answers Melissa's question. "Oh, that's simple." Rumi brazenly challenged Izuku to a duel. "As his loyal housecarl, I took offense to it, and as such, I decided to exercise my right as his housecarl to test her worth," Lydia says as she drinks a health potion to mend her arm. The other reason that she did not mention was that Rumi was so blazingly forward with Izuku. Lydia had to admit it ticked her off, so when she challenged her and moved out of earshot, she made a deal with Rumi that if she proved her worth, she could court Izuku. "And how did I do?" Rumi asked with no hostility in her tone as Izuku healed her. This surprised Melissa. "Wait, you're not angry that you lost?" Melissa asked, confused. She knew a couple of things about the rabbit hero, and two of them were that she was prideful and quick to anger. So seeing her not angry at losing to somebody who is quirkless in such a one-sided fight surprised her. Nah, it was a good fight even if I lost. She was right, I was acting really arrogant, Rumi said, which made everybody look at her in shock. Now probably one of the most prideful pro-heroines in Japan was now admitting when she was wrong. Who was this person, and what did she do with Mirako that the public knew? These thoughts were shared by the group as they looked for some hint of deception. Hey, I may not look like it, but I usually admit when I'm in the wrong, Rumi said, but everybody was still looking at her funny. And Ryako was trying to hold back her laughter at her friend's predicament. But she wasn't lying. She was too arrogant. She thought beating Lydia because she was quirkless would be easy, and she wasn't angry about her losing such a spar. Yes, her pride was hurt, but what was more important to her was how good the fight was. The fact that Lydia was so hard to beat proved that Izuku had to be even stronger, which made Rumi want to have him even more. Now all she had to do is test him, but first, she had to get everybody back on track, so Rumi just rolled her eyes before returning to the original topic. Anyway, do I pass your test? I kind of want to fight the green bean now more than ever. Especially if he's stronger than you, Rumi asked, but the predatory grin and the hungry look in Rumi's eyes made it quite clear to everybody but Izuku that she wanted more than a fight, and the fact that every female had a tick mark that Rumi could see only made her grin more. Yes, the fact that you were able to dent my shield not once but twice with only your kicks, and even your skill in acrobatic movement is quite impressive. So yes, I have determined you are worthy. Now it is up to Izuku if he wishes to spar with you, but I think that must wait for later since Midnight and 13 are here, Lydia says before gesturing to the approaching heroes in question. This made Rumi pout. As Nemuri and Kuros made it over to them, questions were forming in their heads, and Nemuri decided to voice them. Why does the training ground look like a war zone, and why are Mirako and Ryukyu here? Nemuri asked, confused. Well, Lydia and Mirako went at it, and as for your second question, I was wondering that myself, Melissa said, now looking at Izuku, seeing that he had started to explain. Well, that's simple. Apparently our last lesson when I was showcasing the Thursday these two were attracted to it. Thanks to the similar auras and the fact that they recognized Dovahkiin, the language of the dragons on an instinctual level made it is quite clear that they are Dragonborn, Izuku said, explaining. Which made Melissa, Nemuri, and Kuros gasp in shock. You can't be serious. If what I remember from our lessons Dragonborns are extremely rare, so how can there be 3 of you? Melissa asked, still shocked. Rubbing his eyebrow, Izuku attempted to explain. You are right, this is unprecedented, and this worries me. There are only 3 scenarios that I think would make sense. The first one is that Dragonborns are less rare here than in Nirn. The second is something to do with quirks and how they interact with our DNA. For example, Ryukyu's quirk allows her to turn into a dragon, and my grandfather on my father's side also had a minor dragon quirk. The problem with that theory is that we do not know about Mirako's lineage since she has told me she was an orphan. The third and final option is the most worrying to me. The only times Dragonborns have appeared throughout the history of Nirn is when a great evil or a world-altering event was about to appear. And the fact that there are 3 Dragonborns here means something big is coming. Izuku said in a foreboding tone that made the group go silent. This silence only lasted a couple of seconds before Izuku shook his head to clear his thoughts, so he could get back on track with the lesson he had planned. Anyway, that's why they're here, so I can teach them in the ways of the voice. Now I think it's time for us to start our lesson. But before we start casting your first spell, I need you to sign this non-disclosure form that has been reinforced with magic, Izuku said as he pulled out 3 sets of parchment. The parchment looked like it was made from the skin of an animal. On one side, there were strange runic symbols, and on the other side, the non-disclosure agreement that looked like it was written by hand. As he hands the forms to the 3, he continues his explanation. These are standard non-disclosure agreements that have been reinforced with magic. This means if you sign these, you 3 will be officially marked as my apprentices, and you will be incapable of telling anyone how to use magic or the inner workings of how magic functions. The agreement will be in effect until you reach the rank of master, which then you will be able to take your own apprentice. Any questions? Izuku asked calmly but seriously. Melissa, Nemuri, and Kuros all raised their hands. They knew how Izuku ran his classes and knew not to speak out of turn. This was one of the first things that was drilled into them by Izuku. As Izuku points to Nemuri, she begins to speak quickly but calmly. What do you mean exactly that will be incapable of telling anyone? Nemuri asked curiously. It's exactly what it sounds like. You would be incapable of telling anyone who already does not know how magic functions or somebody who does not have my permission. For example, if you and 13, as well as present Mike, were in the same room and present Mike asked you how magic worked. Any words on the topic will come out as gibberish to present Mike, but 13, who has my permission, will understand you completely. Please note to be careful, this only works on verbal communication, not on any written language. This needs to be done for security reasons. I'm pretty sure I don't have to explain what would happen if villains get a hold of this knowledge, now do I? Izuku asked. Still in that serious tone of his. The 3 could completely understand where he was coming from. If villains got a hold of this information, there would be nothing but chaos and destruction. Now, any more questions? Izuku asked. Nemuri raised her hand again, and Izuku allowed her to speak again. As you know, I have to write detailed reports to Nizu. So what am I supposed to tell him? Nemuri asked, a bit concerned. Nothing, simply report that you have signed a non-disclosure agreement, and if he has any problems with that, to take it up with me. If he tries threatening you with your job, bring it to my attention, and I'll handle him personally. Izuku said seriously. Now, any more questions? Izuku asked, but when he sees none, he continues. Good, now read it so you understand it, and then sign your name in blood when you're done. His 3 new official apprentices nodded at this, since they remembered how blood was used in magic. Thanks to lessons with Serena. But Rumi and Ryuko had a totally different reaction. Wait, sign in blood? What kind of fucking cult shit is that? Are you trying to make them sell their souls to you? Rumi asked, shocked. Yes, this seems very odd. I do not pretend to know anything about magic. But is there a better way than that? Ryukyu asked, concerned. Izuku blinked at them in confusion. Then his mind made the connection, as it swirled with possibilities and the possible implications. With that, it triggered something that the legendary Dragonborn was known for in Skyrim. Scholars feared and praised it, Enemies quaked at the mention of it, and even the greybeards who were the masters of the voice feared the possible potential of it. You're probably wondering what would impact the legend of the Dragonborn so much. That would be Izuku's legendary mumble storm. This caused everybody to step back. Only Lydia and Serena did not move from their position, and only giggled at the sight. It was always funny for the pair to see a person's reaction to his mumbling. Although it's been a while since Lydia and Serena saw his legendary mumble storm in public. Usually, he will only do this in the comfort of his own home or in a secluded spot like a library. Lydia could remember how Hila got that old habit of his under control. The older woman would always give him what Izuku called a Gibbs slap, although she still wondered who or what was a Gibbs in the first place. Perhaps she could ask him later. Letting Izuku mumble a little bit longer, Lydia then poked him to get his attention. When she did, it knocked him out of his mumble storm. Izuku rubbed the back of his head sheepishly, then he apologized. "Sorry about that. It's just you guys gave me an idea, and I couldn't help myself," Izuku said. "But for your question, no, there is really no substitute, and although it is theoretically possible for me to steal somebody's soul like this, it's just not practical. It took me a week to make these 3 scrolls, and it would only take me a second to cast the soul capture spell. Not to mention I have to make it very clear in the contract that they're paying with their souls," Izuku said, which only made Rumi and Ryuko look at him stupidly. He didn't blame them, for they had no experience with magic and he knew the two were not the types to be interested in it. But maybe he could explain the basics to them so they wouldn't freak out as much. All well, he needed to start the lesson. There was already too much time wasted, and there was a lot to cover. So, before Rumi and Ryuko could recover, he started talking again. "Okay everybody, it's time for your lesson and for you to learn your first spell," Izuku said as he cast a spell to conjure a chest. Opening it, the group noticed it was full of books with the illusion symbol on all of them. As he rummages through the chest, he starts his lesson. "As you know, that's if you keep up with your studies, is that the illusion school of magic is probably one of the most difficult to learn. Due to the fact that the mage needs to account for a lot more variables than the other schools of magic. If you're altering the natural order or redirecting the energy of mana, a skilled mage could easily calculate the effort required to do so. But for illusion magic, you need to calculate for the target's mind, and every mind is unique, from animals and lesser creatures to the sapient races, no 2 minds are the same. Therefore, a simple illusion spell is not going to affect a wise elder the same way it would affect a cat or a dog. For an illusion to be successful against an intelligent subject, the mage must make his deceptive mirage flawless. But if somebody with an extreme amount of intelligence, like our dear principal, they could easily see through any illusion. Now here are some descriptions that tell of the school's best uses, like swindling a merchant, sneaking around undetected, or driving a creature into a frenzy. Illusion magic can also change a target's visibility, producing or removing light or noise, charming a target, removing a target's courage, preventing a target from seeing or moving, or allowing the target to see in total darkness. The list goes on and on, yet, the list barely scratches the surface of what this school can achieve. But there are a lot of misconceptions about this school of magic. For one, we do not directly send information to somebody's brain or alter somebody's brain signals. What we do is literally alter their perception of reality by changing the mana in the air or the mana inside our target. Every living thing or inanimate object is connected to mana in some way. An illusion mage tugs and weaves these connections to create illusions. And for an illusion mage to truly master the art, they must understand these connections. So that's why your first spell is going to be one that focuses on these connections. Izuku says as he pulls out 3 identical books with the word clairvoyance on them. Melissa's eyes visibly sparkled in excitement. She could not believe that she was finally about to learn a spell. Even though she did not know exactly what the spell did, due to Izuku being extremely tight-lipped about spells, she still could not wait to learn it. Nemuri and Kuros, seeing this, only smiled, but even though they weren't on the level of excitement that Melissa was, they too were excited. Ryuko was only slightly interested, but not by much, and Rumi was confused. She barely understood the jargon that came out of his mouth, but understood enough to get the gist of it. Oh well, she knew from the get-go this magic stuff wouldn't be her thing. When Izuku told her and Ryuko that to learn how to cast spells, they needed an in-depth understanding of the mechanics of spell casting, which requires a lot of studying and meditation. Which made her instantly not interested in it. The only reason she was here was to learn how to shout at people so hard that they go flying, and to learn how to breathe fire. Especially when she was told that learning it was as easy as breathing for her and Ryuko. Now let me explain what this spell does exactly before I hand this lesson off to Serena. Izuku said, getting the group's attention once more. Seeing that he got their attention, he continued. Now, this spell is called clairvoyance, and it is perfect for all 3 of you. It allows you to see a visible trail to your objective. The spell takes the form of blue smoke and will show you the easiest path to your objective, but not the most direct. The spell does this by highlighting the threads of mana that are connected to your objective. Your objective can be anything from finding people under rubble from a disaster, to hunting down an escaped villain, tracking down leads on a case, or even finding a villain out of a crowd. Hell, it's even good for finding your car keys. As long as you have a clear objective in your mind, you can find anything or get to any destination with this spell. The illusions are only visible to you, so they won't reveal your location if you are on a stealth mission. The spell does require a constant stream of your mana for it to work, so it could easily drain you if you're not careful. Now Serena is going to go through the spell book with you guys and make sure you understand the mechanics of the spell, while I go teach Mirako and Ryukyu a few things. Izuku said as he handed the 3 books to Serena and dispelled the chest. As he left the small group, Ryuko and Rumi went with him. Lydia decided to join them, but she wasn't there to train, but to make sure Ryuko and Rumi didn't try anything with Izuku until Serena and she had a discussion with them. Okay, what did Izuku do to attract those 2, especially when they're both known for being very picky with men? Nemuri asked, annoyed. She really liked Izuku, and she could tell Kuros was now in the same boat as her. Hell, she even liked the idea of getting to know Serena a bit more. Yeah, if this keeps up, we're probably going to have one big, what did you call it again? Serena asked as she looked at Kuros, a bit sheepish. Polycule, Kuros said, answering her question. That word made Melissa eep in surprise, causing everybody to look at her now tomato red face. Do we have another possible member of the polycule? Nemuri asked suggestively as she dipped into her midnight persona a bit, causing Melissa to blush harder. Well, I may actually I interested, in Izuku that is. Melissa managed to say as she stammered out her response. Hopping over to Melissa, Serena draped herself over her shoulders. Then welcome to the polycule, my little apprentice. Serena said with a smile that proudly showed off her fangs. 3 hours later in Nizu's office. Izuku was sitting across from Nizu, and both were staring at each other, daring the other to blink. Their little contest of wills lasted for a good couple of minutes before Nizu decided to stop their little game. So he started the conversation that he had wanted to have ever since he figured out Nemuri signed that non-disclosure form. Although I love our little contest of will, we need to get to the reason why I called you here. Nizu said seriously. He did not like the fact that he was now officially out of the loop when it came to the magical knowledge that this boy in front of him had. And he needed to get back into that loop as soon as possible. If this is about me denying you access to the magical lessons that I am teaching my new apprentices, then we have nothing to talk about. Simply put, Nizu, you're too intelligent, and because of your intelligence, you're also extremely mentally unstable. Every time I look at you, I remember an old saying. There's a thin line between brilliance and madness. I have seen and read about many mages who used their magical knowledge to attempt to be gods, and during those attempts, they created nothing but disaster in their wake. I also won't give you knowledge on magic when you still have problems comprehending the concept of human morality. For example, when you use your students for various social experiments so that you can understand them more is morally unacceptable to most humans. You see everything as an experiment in a way to collect data. If I would hand you the knowledge of magic, you would constantly experiment with it until something catastrophic happens. Hell, I already know that the little amount of information I did give you, you already have been experimenting with. Since I can tell that you were trying to unlock your mana recently. Izuku said with a pointed glare, which caused Nizu to flinch. Nizu knew he was right, he wouldn't be able to help himself from experimenting with magic. Even if he read all those books about what happens to people who delve too deep into magic, he knew that he would still do it. But he needed this knowledge to see if something was possible. That is simply not acceptable. I need to know what is being taught in my school. Nizu said sternly. Probably too sternly, though, since Izuku responded with an overwhelming pressure of killing intent. Every instinct that Nizu had was telling him to run, to flee, to get away from this being in front of him. But his body wouldn't move, he just sat there paralyzed in fear. The aura he has, reminded him of a benevolent god when it was pissed off. Let me make something very clear, Nizu, this discussion on this topic is over. Ask for this information again or do anything in retaliation, I'll pack up my group and leave, and we'll go vigilante. We are only bothering with being a hero because it gives us more options. Izuku said as he finally let up on his killer intent. As he did, Nizu somehow managed to work up the courage to speak again. He would not let this boy intimidate him to get his way. Do not think you could intimidate me. We both know that if you go vigilante at this time I would have every hero in the area hunting you down. And you would be in jail after your first attempt at vigilantism. Nizu said as he still tried to put up a strong front, but that faltered when Izuku's laughter rang out through his office. Ha ha ha, oh dear principal, you can't arrest me and all my friends for vigilantism since I would need a quirk to commit such a crime, and thanks to the self-defense laws. As long as I don't use a quirk, I could fight crime without any punishment or repercussions. Izuku said mockingly. Which causes Nizu's eyes to widen in realization. Nizu couldn't believe it, this boy used him. He knew that Nizu would perform an extremely thorough quirk verification test, so there would be no doubt in the eyes of the law that he and his friends were indeed quirkless. The fact that he's already got the money from the first auction means he could easily find a person to hold the next one. He also made deep connections with 4 pro heroes and 2 of them are in the top 10. Not to mention the show of strength and skill that Lydia showed fighting Mirako. Meaning if he were to send people after them there could be a huge bloodbath. Taking a deep breath, he decided to make one more attempt to get the information he needed. I'll drop the topic after one more question, if that's alright with you. Nizu asked tiredly. He knew this boy, no, this man, had him in a corner, but he needed this information, so he was quite relieved at Izuku's next words. Fine, ask your question, but I won't guarantee that I will answer it. Izuku said sternly but with a hint of curiosity. How effective are your healing spells and your healing potions? Nizu said cautiously. This only made Izuku quirk his eyebrow at the question before asking his own. Why would you want to know? Is somebody critically injured? Izuku asked with curiosity in his voice. If somebody was injured to the point where healing quirks were not effective, why would he wait to see if he could steal the information from me and simply not straight up ask me? Unless. Izuku's thoughts were cut off by Nizu speaking. Yes, somebody is quite injured, and in fact, that's why I was so adamant on learning magic. You see, the person's injuries are considered top secret. So I attempted to bypass you so I would not expose that secret. Nizu said cautiously but was quite surprised to see the obvious look of recognition on Izuku's face. You're talking about All Might's injuries that he got 5 years ago. Izuku said, which surprised Nizu. How did you know? Nizu asked in shock. But that question caused Izuku's eyes to lose focus for a second before he looked away. Nizu recognized that reaction, though, it was when somebody was remembering a traumatic event. Usually seen in retired or veteran heroes when they are asked to recall something. This gave Nizu a bad feeling about all of this, and it didn't help when Izuku answered his previous question. That does not matter, what matters is your question. Yes, I can heal him, but I won't. Izuku said, which shocked Nizu. Quickly composing himself, he asked his next question before the boy clammed up. Is there a reason why, if I may ask? Nizu asked quickly but with obvious confusion in his tone. How could this boy know about All Might's injury and not want to heal it, especially if he had the capability of doing so? There was something that he was missing, and he needed to figure that out. It didn't help that this whole situation was turned on its head because he decided to poke the sleeping bear. Now because of that blunder, he might lose all trust and cooperation with probably one of the most dangerous and powerful men in this world. All because he thought he held all the cards. But in reality, he had the deck stacked against him from the beginning. Nizu's thoughts were interrupted by Izuku pulling out a book from his satchel, which he made a habit of carrying around with him. The book looked to be bound in high-quality leather, it had a silver ornate symbol of a dragon on the cover of it, and below it was gold lettering that clearly read the tales of the Dragonborn. Placing it on the desk, he slid it to Nizu and then spoke. The book in front of you is an extremely accurate telling of my entire life before I came back. All my thoughts, my feelings, and my views at the time were all written down for people to learn from and experience for themselves. I left a couple of copies at the College of Winterhold for future students to learn from my mistakes and my heartaches. I also already talked and made a deal with a top-selling publisher that is willing to sell this book. By tomorrow, This book will be sold in every bookstore. But don't worry, the ones being sold to the public lack the very gruesome details and certain top secret information that the public should not know. Anyway, I would recommend you read the entire book, but the questions to your answer are on page 24. Now I'm going to go. Melissa wants to show me, Serena, and Lydia a place she found. Izuku said calmly as he promptly left the office. As Nizu picks up the book to read and as he turns to page 24, he quickly realizes how much shit he dove into.
Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!